a parking garage. December, Windsor, Ontario. A woman in her 60s sitting on the concrete floor next to a car with a flat tire, no jack, no spare, coat too thin for the cold. People walked past. Some slowed down. None stopped. Nadia Osei crouched beside her. She was 23, black, wearing a food delivery jacket, 2 sizes too big, and sneakers with a crack along the left sole. She'd been on shift for 6 hours. She had 4 more deliveries queued on her phone. She canceled them all. "Let me help you with that." The woman looked up, not with relief, with the particular wariness of someone who's been let down before. "I'm fine," the woman said. She was not fine. Nadia sat down on the cold concrete beside her anyway. Not hovering, not performing, just there. That was a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that looks like nothing from the outside and changes everything from the inside. Nadia had no idea what she was walking into. She had no idea the woman on the floor was Constance Beaumont Fairweather, 67, founder of Beaumont Group, one of the largest private property development firms in Ontario. She had no idea that within 6 weeks, that cracked sole on her left sneaker would be the last thing she'd ever worry about affording. She just saw a woman alone in the cold, so she stayed. 4 hours earlier, Nadia had been standing in the bathroom of the basement apartment she shared with her younger brother, Raymond, 19, studying at St. Clair College on a partial scholarship. The apartment was on Drouillard Road. Single window in the kitchen that faced a brick wall. Radiator that knocked twice before it gave heat, which meant you learned to listen for the knock. A card table where they ate, studied, and spread out job applications like a deck they kept reshuffling, hoping for a different hand. Nadia looked at herself in the mirror. Delivery jacket? Yes. But underneath, a blazer she'd found at Value Village, charcoal gray, 1 button missing, which she'd replaced with a black button that didn't quite match. Close enough. She had a job interview at 3:30 at Renwick Property Solutions, a mid-sized development firm on Ouellette Avenue. Admin coordinator, entry level. The listing said no degree required. Nadia had read that line 3 times. She had a business administration diploma from St. Clair. She'd started a degree at Windsor but left after 2nd year when her mother got sick. She went home. She stayed home. After her mother passed, she stayed for Raymond. By then the degree was a door she'd closed without locking, and she wasn't sure whether that meant she could still open it. She'd been applying to office jobs for 14 months. This was her second callback. She checked the blazer one more time, smoothed the lapel. The mismatched button caught the light a certain way, and if you didn't look closely, it looked intentional. She decided it looked intentional. A knock at the door. Raymond, still in his sleep shirt at 11 a.m. "You look professional," he said. "I look like someone who found a blazer." "Same thing." He leaned against the doorframe. "You nervous?" "I'm always nervous. That's not news." He handed her a travel mug. Coffee, strong, made the way their mother used to make it. Dark roast, 2 sugars, a pinch of cardamom. Neither of them had said out loud that they still made it that way. They just did. "You're going to get it," Raymond said. "You don't know that. I know you." He shrugged. "Same thing." She took the mug, held it for a second. "Don't burn the rice again. 1 time, every time." She went out. The delivery shift ran 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. She had a system. Fastest routes, warmest buildings, always park legally. Not because she was worried about tickets, though she was, because the job was the job, and the job deserved to be done right. She'd learned that from her mother, a hospital cleaner for 22 years, who used to say that the work doesn't know your plan. The work only knows whether you show up. By 2:40, she was ahead. She could make 1 more delivery, park downtown, walk to Renwick in time. She accepted the last order. Vietnamese restaurant on Tecumseh, delivery to a parking garage on Pellisier. She found the car on level 2. Dark, green Volvo, immaculate. She knocked. No answer. She looked around, and there at the back of the space, on the concrete floor next to the rear wheel, a woman. Nadia Osei did not think about the interview. She thought about the woman. Constance Beaumont Fairweather had driven herself to a lunch meeting. which she did 3 days a week against the advice of her cardiologist and her daughter and everyone else who had opinions about what a 67-year-old woman with a recent hip replacement should and shouldn't do. She'd parked on level 2 and come back to find the rear passenger tire flat, which shouldn't have been possible given she'd had all 4 replaced in October, which meant something sharp in the garage, which meant this was not her fault, which she informed the empty parking structure about in considerable detail before sitting down because her hip was aching and her phone was at 11%, and she hadn't told anyone where she was because she was Constance Beaumont Fairweather and she didn't report her whereabouts to anyone. A position that was feeling somewhat less principled by the minute. She looked at the young woman crouching beside her. "Do you work here?" "I'm a delivery driver. I just dropped something off for your car." Constance looked at the insulated bag. "I didn't order anything." "You did. Through an app. Pho Bo Vang. Beef broth, noodles, spring rolls." Nadia checked the receipt. Constance B. A. pause. "My assistant ordered that. I told her I was eating at the meeting." "She probably didn't believe you." Constance almost smiled. "Almost. She's worked for me for 11 years. She has trust issues. She sounds smart." Nadia set the bag down. "Do you have a jack?" "The tire people said the spare was." Constance stopped. "I don't know. I don't use the spare. That's what the tire people are for." Nadia walked to the trunk, tried the latch. It opened. She found the jack, the wrench, the spare, all of it neatly packaged and apparently untouched. She looked at her phone. 2:53. The interview was at 3:30. Renwick was 8 minutes away on foot. She looked at Constance. Constance's coat was expensive. Her shoes were expensive. Her hair was expensive. But she was sitting on a concrete floor in a parking garage in December with an 11% battery and a hip that was clearly hurting and the specific expression of someone who was used to solving everything and was temporarily out of tools. Nadia put her phone in her pocket, got down on her knees on the cold concrete. "I'll have this done in 20 minutes. You don't have to." "I know." Nadia started on the first lug nut. "My dad taught me. Old car, no money for mechanics, same principle." Constance was quiet for a moment. Then, "What's your name?" "Nadia. What were you doing before this? Making a delivery. What are you doing after this?" "A beat. I had something. It can move." It could not move. She knew it could not move. But a woman alone in the cold in December outweighed a job interview she probably wasn't going to get anyway. That was just arithmetic. She changed the tire. It took 19 minutes because the third lug nut had been cross-threaded and required patience and a different angle and some words she didn't say out loud. Constance ate her pho. At some point she stopped watching and started talking. About the meeting she'd just left, about a development project near the waterfront that was stalled in city council, about her daughter, who had opinions about everything including the parking garage, about the hip replacement, and how the physiotherapist kept using the word journey, which she found insufferable. Nadia listened the way she listened to Raymond, not waiting for a gap to speak, just actually listening. When she stood up, her knees were marked from the concrete. Her jacket had a grease smear on the right cuff. "There," she said. Constance stood slowly, with the careful precision of someone who'd learned that haste cost her. She looked at the tire. She looked at Nadia. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing. I'm not a mechanic. You just changed my tire in a cold parking garage. My dad would have done the same. He would have also brought coffee." She nodded at the faux bag. "You've got something better." Constance reached into her coat. Nadia took a step back. "I'm not taking money. I wasn't offering money. I was getting my card." Constance held it out. Heavy cardstock, simple font, just the name and a number. "If you ever need anything." Nadia looked at it. She took it. She had no idea what it was. She dropped it in her jacket pocket, next to a receipt for fish sauce and a used hair tie. She walked 8 minutes to Renwick Property Solutions. Arrived at 3:29. Grease on her cuff, knees damp from the concrete, blazer still buttoned. She took a breath at the door, went in. The receptionist looked up, looked the jacket, the smear, the shoes. "Delivery," she said. Interview, Nadia said. Nadia Osei, 3:30. The receptionist blinked. Oh, yes, of course. One moment. She was taken to a glass-walled room that smelled like new carpet and filtered air. The interviewer was Trevor Hollis, 44, white director of operations, trim gray suit, the kind of man who had a very firm handshake and used it to say things words couldn't. He looked at Nadia's jacket, her cuff, didn't say anything, sat down, opened a folder. So, he said, no degree, diploma from Clare Business Administration. I started a degree at Windsor, but didn't finish, family circumstances. He wrote something. And currently you're a delivery driver, currently. Yes. For how long? 14 months. He nodded the way people nod when they've already decided and are just getting through the motion. We're looking for someone with a bit more of a professional background. Client-facing. Corporate experience. I have organizational experience, budget tracking, scheduling. I ran logistics for a small operation while also managing. Miss Osei. He said it gently, which was worse. We appreciate you coming in. We'll be in touch. She knew what that meant. She'd heard it before. She'd heard it 14 times in 14 months. She took the bus home, didn't cry on the bus. Waited until she was on the stairs of her building, which had a sort of privacy to it because the overhead light had been out since September, and no one in particular could see her there in the dark, which was its own small mercy. Raymond had made rice. Successfully this time. He'd also, because he was Raymond, made the rest of the food without being asked. He looked at her face when she came in. The interview, he said. I don't want to talk about it. Okay. He put food in front of her. There's cardamom in the tea. She ate. She didn't talk. He didn't push. After a while, she said, I changed a tire. When? Before the interview. Woman in a parking garage. Flat tire, no, help, cold. Raymond looked at her. And then you went to the interview with grease on your jacket. I didn't notice until I was already there. He was quiet for a second. Then, with the particular tone he used when he was about to say something he thought was important, Mum would have changed the tire too. Nadia looked at the table. I know, she said. She didn't tell Tim about the card. It was still in her jacket pocket. She wasn't sure why she didn't mention it. Maybe because it felt like a thing that probably meant nothing, and she didn't want Raymond to attach hope to something that meant nothing. He was 19, and he had enough on his plate. 3 days passed. She took more shifts. The card sat in her jacket pocket. On Thursday morning, she found it when she was checking for her phone. She looked at it for a long time. Then she thought, the worst thing that happens is no one answers. She texted the number. This is Nadia Osei. I changed your tire on Tuesday in the parking garage on Pellissier. I hope you got home safely. She put her phone face down and went to make coffee. 4 minutes later, it rang. Nadia. The voice was exactly as she remembered it. Clear, direct, no preamble. I've been hoping you'd reach out. I wasn't sure you would. Are you free to meet Friday afternoon? Nadia looked at her delivery queue. She had 5 orders booked. Yes, she said. I'm free. She wasn't free, but she rescheduled. The address Constance gave her was on Riverside Drive East, a low-glass building set back from the river, understated in the way that very expensive things sometimes are. The sign by the door said B.A. Mont Group in small silver letters. Nadia had heard the name. Everyone in Windsor had heard the name. The Beaumont Group Waterfront Development. The Beaumont Group Community Center in Sandwich. The Beaumont Group Scholarship Fund at the University of Windsor, that her classmate had applied for once. She stood on the sidewalk for longer than she should have. Then she went in. The lobby was warm, light coming off the river through floor-to-ceiling windows. The receptionist, a young South Asian woman with good posture, looked up and smiled before Nadia even reached the desk. Ms. Osei, Constance is expecting you. I'll take you up. Constance's office was on the 3rd floor. It wasn't what Nadia expected. No mahogany desk, no leather chairs, no wall of framed accomplishments. It was a working space. Wide table covered in site plans, 2 laptops, a whiteboard with columns of figures, a philodendron on the windowsill that needed watering, A photo on the bookshelf of a younger Constance on a construction site, hard hat, muddy boots, absolutely delighted. Constance stood by the window. Same posture as in the parking garage, upright, careful, like she'd decided a long time ago that she would not let the hip decide how she carried herself. "You came," she said. "You called. Sit, please." Nadia sat. Constance poured tea without asking. Same way Nadia made it, which was probably a coincidence that meant nothing. "Tell me what you do," Constance said. "Not what your CV says, what you actually do." So Nadia told her. The diploma, the degree she'd left, her mother, the hospital, the 2 years of trying to keep things together, and realizing that some things only hold if you hold them. Raymond and his scholarship and his textbooks stacked on the card table. The delivery shifts, the route optimization she'd worked out in her head, the budget tracking she did for herself just to understand where every dollar went. The 14 months of applications. The 14 polite rejections. Constance listened without interrupting, which was notable because Nadia got the sense that Constance interrupted people regularly and chose not to hear. "The interview Thursday," Constance said finally. "Renwick." Nadia stopped. "How did you?" "Trevor Hollis. I know him professionally. He mentioned he'd interviewed a young woman who came in after changing someone's tire." She said it evenly, without drama. "He meant it as a story. He didn't realize it was you until I described you." A silence. Nadia wasn't sure what to do with that. "He passed on you," Constance said. "I know." "He was wrong." She set her tea down. "I've been in this business for 40 years. I've hired people with Ivy League credentials who had no instinct for anything, and I've met people who could read a situation, make a call, and follow through without being asked." She looked at Nadia. "You saw a woman alone in the cold. You assessed the problem. You had somewhere to be, and you stayed anyway. You didn't make a production of it. You didn't ask for anything. And when I offered you money, you stepped back." She paused. "And then you fixed the tire correctly, which, frankly, is also not nothing." Nadia didn't know what to say. She said, "My dad would have. I know." "You said." The corner of Constance's mouth moved. "I'd like to offer you a position. Project coordination, working directly with our development team. It's not entry level. It has a salary commensurate with that." She named a number. Nadia kept her face still. It was 3 times what she was making, nearly 4. "I need to be clear," Constance said. "I'm not offering this because you helped me. I'm offering this because the conversation we just had told me more about how you think than most interviews I've conducted. Tuesday is how I found you. This conversation is why I'm asking." Nadia looked at her hands. The knuckle on her right index finger still had a faint mark from the cross-threaded lug nut. "When would you need an answer?" "Take the weekend. Talk to whoever you need to talk to." A pause. "Is there someone?" "My brother." "Good. Talk to him." Nadia stood. They shook hands. On the way out, Nadia paused at the bookshelf photo. Young Constance, hard hat, muddy boots, that expression of someone who's just done something that scared her and found out she could. "Early days?" Nadia asked. "First sight. I was 26. Everyone told me it was the wrong market, wrong time, wrong person." Constance looked at the photo. "I find that advice is often autobiographical." Nadia left. She stood on the sidewalk. December sun on the river, flat and silver, the kind of light that makes everything look both cold and clean. She stood there long enough that a woman walking a dog gave her a concerned look. She texted Raymond, "Can you not burn the rice tonight? I need to talk to you." "Raymond, why Nadia?" "Something happened, Raymond. Good something or bad something." She looked at the building, at the silver letters. "I think, good," she sent. "I'm not burn the rice." She went home. She told him everything. Raymond sat across the card table with his textbook open and his tea going cold, and he didn't say anything until she was done. Then he said, "You knew who she was?" "No, not until the office." "You just changed her tire because she needed it." "Yes." He looked at her the way he sometimes did, like he was checking something, making sure it was still there. "Mum wouldn't have changed the tire." "You said that already, because it keeps being true." He closed the textbook. "Take the job, Nadia." She took the job. Her first week at Beaumont Group, she arrived early, left late, said little, and paid attention to everything. Constance ran a tight operation. Project managers who knew their files, an admin team that had worked together long enough to finish each other's sentences, a culture that moved fast and expected you to keep up. Nadia kept up. She also noticed something else. There was a man who watched her, Gordon Slate, 51, white, director of acquisitions, silver hair worn just long enough to look distinguished, a handshake you felt in your shoulder. He'd been at Beaumont Group for 12 years. He had an office next to Constance's and a habit of appearing in doorways in a way that was difficult to object to because he was always just passing through. The first week, he passed her in the hallway and said pleasantly, "How are you settling in?" "Very well, thank you. Good, good." A pause. "Constance mentioned you met through an unusual set of circumstances." "A flat tire," Nadia said. "Nothing unusual." He smiled. "Of course." The second week, he stopped by during a planning meeting she was sitting in and asked her, in front of 4 other people, how familiar she was with Windsor's zoning regulation updates from the previous quarter. She told him. Date, section, implications for the Riverside East project. She'd read the file twice. His expression stayed the same. Good. Good. The third week, she noticed he'd started having a separate conversation with the project manager on the waterfront contract. Low voice after meeting conversations in hallways. She couldn't hear what was said. She noticed the project manager started seeing people on emails that he'd previously sent to her directly. She said nothing. She kept her head down. She did the work. The fourth week, Gordon Slate walked into Constance's office during a meeting Nadia wasn't part of. He was in there for 40 minutes. When he came out, his expression was pleasant. It was always pleasant. Pleasantness, Nadia was learning, could be a weapon. She found out what was said through a process she didn't ask for. Jonna Breck, 38, project manager on the waterfront file, appeared in the doorway of Nadia's small desk space at 5:45 p.m. on a Wednesday when most of the office had emptied. "I want you to know something," Jonna said without preamble. "I don't agree with what's happening." Nadia looked up. "What's happening?" Jonna's expression was the expression of someone who is about to say something that will cost her and has decided to say it anyway. Gordon made a case to Constance that bringing you in at your level, without going through the full HR process, created equity issues for the rest of the team. He suggested your role be reclassified. Back to entry level, probationary. Nadia kept her face level. The thing about being underestimated your whole life is that you get very good at not showing what the underestimation does to you. He said this to Constance, Nadia said. He said she was letting personal feelings affect professional decisions. Jonna pressed her lips together. He said it more diplomatically than that. He's very good at diplomatic. Thank you for telling me. I just thought you should know. Jonna started to go. Stopped. Your work on the Riverside summary last week was the clearest breakdown of the zoning implications I've seen from anyone on this team. I want you to know that also. She left. Nadia sat at her desk for a long time. The office settled into its end-of-day quiet, the particular silence of a building switching from working to empty. Outside, the river was dark. She thought about the card table, about the 14 months of applications, about Raymond's textbooks and the radiator that knocked twice before it gave heat, about Gordon Slate's handshake and his pleasant, careful words, about the way he'd asked her about zoning regulations in front of an audience, like a test designed to be failed. She thought about her mother. 22 years cleaning hospital floors, never cutting corners, never explaining herself, just doing the work so well that everyone knew her name. She opened her laptop. She finished the Riverside summary. She made it better than it had been. She sent it to Jonna and CC'd the project lead and, because she had nothing to hide and every reason to be visible, Constance. Then she went home. The next morning, Constance asked her to come in at 8 a.m. before the rest of the office arrived. Nadia wore the blazer. She'd replaced the button. matching one, from a tailor on Erie Street who'd charged her $8 and had opinions about her lapel that she hadn't asked for and secretly appreciated. Constance was already at her table. Site plans moved aside. 2 cups of tea. She gestured to the chair. Gordon came to me, Constance said. I know. Jonna told you. Yes, good. I'm glad you know. Constance wrapped both hands around her cup. He made a reasonable-sounding argument. That's Gordon. He always makes reasonable-sounding arguments. He said the process wasn't followed. He said other team members had gone through formal evaluation. He said personal relationships shouldn't influence professional placements. Nadia said nothing. She'd learned that Constance thought incomplete passes and interrupting them was a waste of everyone's time. What he didn't say, Constance continued, is that he's been positioning himself to lead the Riverside East project for 2 years. It's the largest acquisition in our pipeline. It would effectively make him my operational successor. She looked out the window, and then you walked in, and within 3 weeks you produced an analysis of the zoning situation that his team had been working on for 6 months. Nadia kept still. He didn't object to you, Nadia. He objected to what you represent to his plan. Constance turned back. There's a difference, and I want you to understand that I understand that difference. What happens now? Constance picked up a folder, set it on the table between them. Gordon's request to reclassify your position has been denied. Your role stands as offered. She opened the folder. Additionally, I'm assigning you as deputy coordinator on the Riverside East project. You'll report to Jonna Breck and present to me monthly. Nadia looked at the folder. Her name was on the cover sheet. This isn't because of Tuesday, Constance said. I want to be clear about that. It was never because of Tuesday. Tuesday is how we met. This, she tapped the folder, is because of your Riverside summary, because of how you handled your first 4 weeks, because of the things Jonna told me without knowing she was confirming everything I already thought. She looked at Nadia steadily. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've watched people with every credential and every advantage squander what they were given. And I've watched people with nothing but will and clarity build things that matter. She paused. You changed my tire when you had somewhere to be. Then you went to the interview anyway. Late, with grease on your jacket, because you'd decided it was worth trying even if it didn't work. She shook her head slightly. That's not a story I tell at board meetings. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. A quiet settled in the room, the kind that has weight to it, that you don't want to break too fast. Gordon? Nadia asked. Gordon will be fine. Gordon has always been fine. People like Gordon are always fine. A pause. He'll have a conversation with me this week about professional conduct and organizational priorities. He knows what that conversation will cover. Nadia nodded. She stood, picked up the folder. At the door she stopped. The woman who scanned me when I came in for the interview said delivery before I'd said a word. Constance tilted her head. I'm not interested in being treated differently, Nadia said. I'm interested in being treated according to what I produce. Constance held her gaze. I know that. It's why we're having this conversation. Nadia went to work. 6 months later, her name was on the coordination documents for the Riverside East project. The development, when it broke ground, would bring 300 jobs to the East End, including an apprenticeship stream that Nadia had proposed and written the operational framework. For in a Thursday afternoon, she still remembered clearly because Raymond had called twice, and she'd let it go to the voicemail and called him back at 6 p.m. to tell him she'd been promoted and he'd made rice to celebrate and not burned it, which was, he insisted, an unprecedented achievement deserving of its own recognition. She moved apartments, not far, same neighborhood, 1 block east, ground floor, a real window, enough light to grow something on the sill. She bought a plant, kept it alive. This felt significant. Every Monday she called Raymond. Every other Sunday she made it to his apartment for dinner, where he had, through practice and some consultations with a YouTube channel their mother would have loved, become a genuinely competent cook. They ate and talked about things that mattered and things that didn't, which is another way of saying they talked about everything, which is the most important thing families do. Gordon Slate quietly transferred to Beaumont Group's Calgary office 8 months after Nadia joined. He didn't announce it. One day he was there, the next his office was empty. No one made a speech. A plant was moved in. It was Nadia's plant, a second one, because the first was doing so well she'd been given confidence she didn't entirely deserve yet. Jana Breck ran the Riverside East project with Nadia beside her, and when the project wrapped 18 months later, Jana recommended Nadia for project lead on the next development. Constance approved it the same day. At the internal announcement, Constance said what she always said about promotions. The work speaks. We amplify. Nadia said nothing at the announcement. She wasn't asked to. Later, Jana leaned over in the meeting and said quietly, "You know you're the youngest project lead we've had." "I know," Nadia said. "Gordon's going to hear about this. Gordon moved to Calgary. He'll hear about it in Calgary." Jana smiled. "Good. The tire bracelet. Well, there was no bracelet. This isn't that story. What there was, folded in the inside pocket of the charcoal blazer, was the original business card. Heavy cardstock. Small font. Just a name and a number. Nadia moved it from the blazer to her wallet, and from her wallet eventually to the inside cover of a notebook she kept on her desk. She wasn't sure why she kept it. Maybe because it was the original proof of something she needed to remember. That the moment you start calculating whether kindness is worth it, you've already answered wrong. Her mother had known that. She'd been cleaning hospital floors for 22 years and she'd known that. Raymond knew it. He'd made coffee with cardamom because that's how their mother made it, not because anyone asked him to. Nadia had known it too, standing in a parking garage in December with 4 more deliveries queued and a job interview she'd waited 14 months for. She'd known it and done it anyway. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. I want to tell you something before you go. The story you just heard is about a parking garage and a flat tire and a woman who sat on the floor in December. It sounds small. Most of the real ones do. What I keep coming back to is the 3 people who walked past Constance before Nadia got there. Not bad people, probably. Just people doing the arithmetic, calculating, deciding it wasn't their problem, their time, their responsibility. And then walking. We all have that moment. The choice point that looks like nothing. A person on a floor, an empty seat on a bus. A colleague saying something that isn't your fight. We calculate, and the calculation takes a second, and then we walk, and we don't think about it again. Nadia didn't calculate. Not because she wasn't tired. She was. Not because she had time. She didn't. Because she looked at a woman alone in the cold, and the question of whether it was worth it didn't come into it. The woman needed help. That was the whole equation. That's what I want you to take with you. Not the job. Not the promotion. Not Gordon Slate in Calgary finding out over the phone that the person he tried to push out just made project lead. Just this. Do it before you decide if it's worth it. That's the window. That's the only window. If this story hits something in you, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear it today. Leave me a comment and tell me about a time someone helped you when they didn't have to. I read everyone. Subscribe to Dell Stories for a new story every week. Real, human, and always worth your time. The card is still in the notebook. The plant on Nadia's windowsill is doing fine. Raymond, last anyone checked, has not burned the rice.